because I just kept cranking.
All
All right,
right.
the meeting is live.
Right.
Okay, we're live.
All right,
Okay, we are now live streaming.
Incredible. Thank you. Members of the public, we are sorry for the delayed start. We had some technical difficulties that we just worked through. Thank you to the MSDE team for making that work so smoothly and quickly. So good afternoon to members of the public, to our committee members and staff on today's call. I'm excited to call to order the first meeting of 2026 of the State Board's Strategy and Operations Committee. Welcome, y'all. Very quick housekeeping items before we get started today. All of our meetings are live streamed on YouTube, and our materials are available on the committee's page on the State Board website. Additionally, we would love to warmly welcome our newest member to this committee and our board. Nicole Murray Lewis is joining us today, our teacher member on the board. Welcome, Nicole. It's so good to see you.
Thank you.
Yeah. And as is fitting for the first meeting of the year, we have a packed agenda. So let's go ahead and jump right in. First up, we're going to hear from MSDE's assessment team on Maryland students' performance on the 2025-2026 English Language Proficiency Assessment, also known as the WIDA Access Assessment. Let's go ahead and kick it over to, I believe, Mr. Sanderson.
yes, sir. Thank you.
To kick us off.
Let me go ahead and share my screen for everyone, and I'll be co-presenting today with Teresa Timmons-Parrott, who is our Director of Multilingual Language Services. So she is, I believe, on the call. She's actually off-site. Yeah, I see her now, so very good. All right, so let me cue this up real quick for you guys. And I'm excited to be able to also share, since this is the first meeting of the new year and is also the first installment of our new template that features our newly adopted state strategic plan. So we'll be presenting that to you all today as well.
I like this a lot.
So let me make sure if I can just get a confirmations that you all can see, because it's gotten busy on my screen. Okay, very good. All right, so thank you again. This afternoon, we wanted to give board members an overview of the English language assessment that's administered to our students here in Maryland, kind of give you a broad foundation of why we administer English language proficiency assessments, who gets them, how long they get them, what are the results that we're seeing within our trend data, and so forth. And with that, let me introduce the slide that will become most commonplace for you all now. This is the newly designed template that we're using. It highlights the 5 pillars within our state strategic plan. We'll be referencing it now within each presentation and making connections with information that we share with you all and how it relates to our state strategic plan. And for today's installment, featuring our multilingual learners, we'll be talking about Pillar 3 that has reference to our college and career readiness, and specifically that every student graduates high school, college, and career ready. What we've identified based on this for today's conversation, I'm going to minimize this real quick, are 3 outcomes that connect directly with today's presentation. And outcome 3.F, which represents English increased proficiency on all state assessments for each student. 3.G, which represents decreased gaps in proficiency on all state assessments between student groups. And then 3.H, that represents increased percentage of students demonstrating growth on statewide assessments at each grade level in each student group. WIDA, as a broad overview, it is an acronym that, interestingly enough, has changed its abbreviation. It's been WIDA. When it was initially established as WIDA, it stood for Wisconsin, Delaware, and Arkansas, because they were the founding states that partnered for this consortium that has now grown to represent 42 states nationwide. And what it is a consortium that is designed to support the teaching of multilingual learners. And within that provides not only assessments that are used to monitor multilingual learners, but also provides teaching and learning frameworks rooted in ELD, which is English Language Development Standards to drive effective instruction. Maryland as a state joined in 2011, and you may have seen the news, I think within the last month or two, there was an announcement that New York is the most recent state to join, rounding out at 42 states that are now a part of this consortium supporting multilingual learners and using common assessments across. Process for identification of multilingual learners. Every student in the state of Maryland upon enrollment is issued a home language survey. There are 3 questions that we ask of each student. To be answered, you'll see those bulleted in the bottom left. It is, what language does the student learn to speak? What language does the student use most often to communicate, and what language are spoken in your home? And based on the answers to that, if 2 or more of the 3 questions are not English, then that would prompt a screening of the student to determine English language proficiency. And you'll see on the right, the screening instruments that we use for our students are within the WIDA family. And then based on performance on those screening instruments, the student achieves below a score of 4.5, which we will talk about shortly, which is level 4.5, then they would be identified as limited English proficient, or what is most recently termed multilingual learner, and be eligible for English language development services. We do provide annual assessments for students, assessments that are administered for any student that is identified as multilingual learner. They would be administered in the spring, a English language proficiency instrument, which is the WIDA access test you see here. For kindergarten and for students taking the alternate assessment versions, they are paper-based in administration. For students that are in grades 1 through 12, it is online and can be group administered. You'll see in the table here, this kind of tracks with the administration. And so students, as long as they are identified as multilingual learner, will continue to be assessed annually using the WIDA access test until they have achieved the threshold that you will see for exiting criteria on this slide. And so the way the scoring works for WIDA access is it tracks with the horizontal chart that you see here, level 1, and the descriptor associated with that is entering or the most limited command of the English language, all the way over to 6 or level 6, which is defined as reaching English language proficiency. In the state of Maryland, multilingual learners must score a proficiency level of 4.5 or greater in kindergarten and online, or if they're taking the alternate assessment, they have to achieve a performance level of 4 or greater in order to be considered for exiting services. This next one, upon exiting, students are monitored for 2 years thereafter. We refer to those students that have achieved an exiting score as reclassified English learners. The 2-year period is intended to be kind of watchful eyes on students to ensure that they continue to maintain academic success after they have been exited from English language development services. If a reclassified student demonstrates significant academic challenges, then they may reinitiate, the school may reinitiate evaluation to determine if it is warranted for the student to be re-entered into language services to support and continue to grow their English language foundation. The reclassified students do not have an English learner plan, so they're case managed to ensure that academic success, but they're not receiving direct services, and they're not eligible for special accommodations on state mandated assessments that English learners, current multilingual learners, would be eligible for. What you'll see on slide 10 represents the progression that we've observed since 2018 in multilingual growth, our population. You'll see that it starts in the 2017-2018 school year, we had identified at that time 83,533 English learners. You'll see that it has increased up to the most recent reporting year of 2024-2025 school year, up to 121,985 students. That represents a 38,452 student count increase, or more dramatically, it also represents a 46% increase from 2018 up to 2025. So definitely a growing segment and growing part of the student population here in Maryland. The table on the right represents their proportionate share of the overall student enrollment in Maryland. You'll see that in the 2018 year, multilingual learners represented approximately 9.3% of the students served in Maryland public schools. Most recently, you'll see that has increased over 4 percentage points up to 13.6% of student population. This next chart breaks it down based on the scoring group. If you recall that students need to achieve a level 4.5 on the WIDA access test in order to be eligible for exiting English language development services. What this represents is, upon testing, this is the anticipated amount of time it will take students in order to achieve that optimal 4.5 score or higher. So as an example, when I am first screened and then assessed, if I achieve a score of level 1.0 to 1.9, it's anticipated that it's going to take 6 years for me to develop English language proficiency. You'll see the breakdown for the remaining scores for any student that does not achieve that 4.5 on initial testing, the amount of time anticipated in order for them to have English language proficiency. This chart represents the students that are making annual progress towards English language proficiency. And so as an example, if you recall in that earlier slide, if I was at the lowest level scoring a level 1 to a level 1.9, it's anticipated that it would take me 6 years in order to achieve a 4.5 score or higher. And so what we end up doing then is having interim annual targets that are equal intervals for students to make progress, even though they might not achieve that 4.5, say from first year to the second year, we would anticipate a proportionate amount of growth. And so what this represents are students that are at least achieving that annual interim growth or are achieving the score of 4.5 for exiting criteria. By color shades, you'll see that our elementary students overall are making more progress in English language development than are the high school students and the middle school students. The break in the middle for 2021, because of this assessment opens up in January and closes in March, we were able to complete assessment prior to pandemic closure in the 2019-2020 school year, but then WIDA was not administered during the 2020-2021 school year when all students were learning virtually. And then it resumed once we reintegrated students in in-person instruction through the current year. Next slide. And so what this slide trying to represent is the percent annually of students that are achieving exit status. And so as an example, in the 2017-2018 school year, we had of the English, of the multilingual learners that were assessed, we had 10.8% that met exit criteria within that given year. And so you can see it's been fairly flat over the course of some 8-9 years of assessing, with most recently the percent of students meeting exit criteria that were assessed was 8.9%. The table on the right represents the students tested annually. And so as an example, in 2018, we had 79,000 679 multilingual learners that were assessed. Of those, what this represents is what percent were first-time testers, because you're going to have a large share of students that are previous MLs that remain MLs, but until they have achieved that level 4.5 score or higher, would continue to be assessed annually until they demonstrate English proficiency. So as an example, you'll see that the percent of students that were first-time testers in 2018 was 26.4%. It tracks fairly consistently through the years. We did have some uptick in the 2022 school year. We attribute that in part because of the larger concentration of students that were being assessed because of the gap that we had in the 2020-2021 school year with no WIDA access being administered. And then most recently, you'll see that in the 24-25 school year, we had approximately 20.8% of our multilingual learners that were taking WIDA access for the first time. The last two slides, and then we'll open it up for any questions that you have. Now, the assessment results, as well as any programming strategies that you have questions about. These slides we've shared with you before. You may recall, I believe in the September 2025 board presentation, I had shared with you during our MCAP deep dive presentation. The question that was raised here, and actually I think it was by you, Mr. Greer, in a previous board meeting, what is the relationship between students that are ML and how they do on the language test? How do they do on WIDA access? What is that relationship based on WIDA access to how they perform on the MCAP test when they're administered annually? And so what you'll see for this first slide, this represents MCAP ELA performance. For a quick overview of the legend, the orange bar represents those scoring on the MCAP ELA test at level 1. Blue represents level 2. Green is level 3. And yellow is level 4. And so what you'll see in this first one, if we just take the level 1 column, the first column within this chart, you'll see of the students that were performing at level 1 on the WIDA access score, so achieved a score of level 1, the overwhelming majority of those students were unsuccessful on the MCAP ELA test. That's represented by the students that were level 1 WIDA access. Of those students that were 8,000 some odd students tested, we had 61.7% that achieved a level 1 on the MCAP ELA test, and 38.2% that achieved a level 2. So we had a fraction of students represented by 0.2% that achieved level 3 or were achieving proficiency on the MCAP ELA test, which stands to reason, as they're still developing English language proficiency, that they would struggle on an English administered ELA assessment. You'll see as that tracks forward, the progress that students make. And so what we would anticipate, which does play out here, is as they perform higher on their language proficiency test, which is represented across the, excuse me, the horizontal axis, you'll see that we start introducing more green and some yellow as we get towards the end. And so if you looked at level 4 as an example, which kind of straddles the exit criteria, but not fully, because it would be 4.5. So not every student at level 4 is in the exit score, but you'll see that we now start to see a share of those students that are experiencing success, which is represented by the 25.6% in the achieving level 3 on MCAP ELA, and then the 0.2%. And so approximately 26% of students, if they are scoring a level 3 on their English language proficiency test, are also being successful or experiencing success on the MCAP ELA test. And then the last two columns would represent those students that have achieved a passing score on WIDA access, and then how are they performing subsequently on their MCAP ELA assessment, with the last column being those students that are fully reclassified who have exited English language development services. We see now that we have approximately 63% of those students that are achieving proficiency on the MCAP ELA assessment. The final slide, this one represents mathematics. It's not going to show as large a share of proficiency. In large part, we would expect that because our proficiency rates in mathematics are considerably lower than they are in the ELA. You'll recall most recently, statewide, we had an English language arts proficiency rate of 52%, and then that would compare with mathematics where we were at 26%. And so approximately half of our students are successful on the MCAP ELA, and only about a quarter of them are successful on the MCAP mathematics test. But same illustration here, you'll see those students scoring level 1. We only saw if they were level 1 on WIDA, we only had a sliver at 1% that were passing the MCAP mathematics test. As you track across, you'll see when you start getting into that level 4 range with students starting to develop much greater command of the English language, that we're seeing success not nearly as high, but they are starting to see some success represented by that 15.2%. That would be level 3 scoring, and then the 0.5% that is the level 4 scoring. And then finally, last column representing those students that have been exited from services because they achieved a WIDA access score of 4.5 or greater. You'll see their rates are actually tracking fairly closely with what we're seeing in statewide results. In total, you have approximately 26% of those students that have been reclassified that are achieving proficiency on the mathematics test. And with that, we're happy to answer any questions that you have. I can stop sharing my screen or leave it up. You all kind of direct me on how you would like to move forward.
Let's leave it up just for a moment in case there's any questions related to the slides. If there aren't, then we can pull it down. I know I have a few that are related to the slides, so it might come back up later, but I'll go last. Let's start with committee members. Any questions? Then we'll go to the broader board members that are on the call. Yeah, Ms. Medina.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for that presentation. I really want to start by saying how much I appreciate the way that the language is formulated around this conversation right now. I think we are light years ahead of where we were when discussing multilingual learners. I think being bilingual and multilingual is a superpower, and I really appreciate us not discussing those students from a deficit lens. So I really just wanted to acknowledge that first. But I did have a question. In looking at slide 11, when we were talking about those anticipated numbers, I guess I wanted to understand a little bit more about how we're coming up with that. And then also, is there any type of positive correlation between 11 and 13? And I guess what I mean by that is what we're anticipating actualizing when we were looking at students exiting, or do those numbers not actually go together? That's all. So I hope I framed that appropriately for my question.
Yep. I don't know if I can fully answer slide 13 question just yet, but I think I understand the question. I can speak a little bit to slide 11, then I'm going to also kick it over to our resident expert who's also joining me for this presentation. But if you recall, when we started this presentation, we had mentioned that there are 42 states that are a part of this consortium that makes up WIDA. And because of that, it builds and allows for lots of testing and lots of data. And so based on that, what you're seeing with these years is not Maryland specific exit anticipation. This is a part, what I would say is a national expectation, since it is the same language proficiency instrument that's being administered across all of the states that are a part of this consortium. And based on the research, that's the parent arm for WIDA is the University of Wisconsin. And so they continue to provide standardization behind the scenes and validity and reliability results. And based on that, this is the anticipated table that they have produced based on what they have seen with, well, I mean, you just take us for an example, and then you multiply it across however many of these 42 states, the amount of data that they anticipate would be exiting. And then Teresa can probably give a little bit better answer as it relates to language development and the what's expected between those students being able to develop cognitive academic language proficiency. So, Teresa, maybe I'll let you chime in on this one as well.
Sure. Good afternoon, everybody. Ms. Medina, thank you for acknowledging that it's coming from an asset-based approach. I've been working really hard on that in my short time with the agency because I get so frustrated when we're always looking at what students can't do, whether they're multilingual learners or students with disabilities or whatever. So, thank you very much. I'm answering your question on this too. If I'm not going where you want, just interrupt me. But I think over the past year and stuff, we've made a lot of strong progress in system coherence and clarity, particularly in how our MLs are identified, monitored, and supported, statewide, right? And we've now been more consistent with the use of access data to understand growth and clearer alignment with a broader accountability framework. And that's not because people were choosing not to do it at MSDE. There just wasn't somebody in my position. So I came on board new to kind of oversee some of this. But I think when I'm looking at some of these numbers and things, I think moving forward, and I've looked at data with my ML supervisors, right? We meet literally, we have work group Wednesdays. Today we didn't because I was at JSUP out in Swanton, Maryland, by the way, beautiful area of the state. So we didn't meet today, but we're always talking about moving forward, what do we need to do? And I think what we've kind of landed on for the FY26 school year is our key area for growth is really deepening the instructional impact by more intentionally connecting our access data to statewide math, and you can see why by the data, literacy, and our MTSS initiatives, just kind of providing that coherence. And the next phase that we're really pushing right now is ensuring the language development is fully integrated into core instruction and tiered supports and not treated as a separate system, right? So Jeff's department does a really nice job showing access as part of that MCAP suite of assessments. It's not this standalone over here. But I think one thing that we're trying to really tune into statewide is why are the elementary scores better than what we're looking at middle school and secondary level? So it's kind of a pattern that seemed to be consistent nationwide, right? Nationally. Elementary students tend to show that faster growth because they receive more sustained integrated language instruction throughout the day. And they're earlier in their language development journey as well, right? But at the secondary level, those language demands increase significantly. Instruction becomes more content specific and students also have less time for that explicit language development. So that's where we've been doing a lot of work with the agencies, really building in scaffold and support. So it's not that standalone ELD class. So I hope that answers where you were going with that. I'm not sure, Ms. Medina.
It was definitely helpful for context. I guess when I look at slide 13, I was just wanting to make sure I guess that number one, that I'm understanding it, but because I see that it's been pretty steady, even though we had huge growth numbers in how many ML students are identified. So I'm wondering, is that a good thing? As we're growing in that population, are we actually exiting the students, within this hopeful time range? So I guess that was what I was trying to get at, but I do really appreciate the context.
So I think that's going to be a follow-up activity, but I think what you're asking for is of all the students that score level 1, as an example, on WIDA Access, what is the rate of those students that are achieving 4.5 within that 6 years? Gotcha. Okay. That'll be a follow-up activity from me to you all.
Great. That would be a great follow-up. Dr. Michael.
Thank you for the presentation. I want to say that I'm excited that we're looking at this data. This is the second time the board has looked at WIDA data. The first time was in 2023. in June as part of a larger presentation on English language on English learners. This is the first time we've specifically looked at WIDA data, I believe, in history, with a safe word. And so I just want to say thank you for bringing this to us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next year, and making this an annual part of our work. So thank you for that. I wanted to, and happy to follow up on this, get a better picture of what percent of students are exiting, or how to be thinking about students exiting at 4.5. What percent are, we've got a good read on who's making progress, but what do we know about students who are exiting and meeting that threshold? And any commentary you could provide on that, and potentially it makes more sense to follow up.
So I'll go first. I think that through my lens, we were looking at it from the performance on state assessments as kind of the second picture or second lens, how those students do. And so when we get into this one, I would say that those students that are achieving the English language proficiency are closely tracking in many respects with performance that we're seeing across general student population on the state mandated assessments as a whole. We certainly are seeing in those that once they, which is positive, and I think that's encouraging for us, is that and we recognize the students that are struggling with the English language are going to struggle on an English only test, but once they have developed the command and proficiency of the assessment we're seeing of the language, we're seeing similar performance from those students on as they would their non-ML students.
Great.
And I think to piggyback on that, Dr. Michael, I think from I think from an MSDE perspective, like we view that 4.5 as like a readiness indicator, not a finish line. So students meeting that threshold really are showing that like balanced proficiency across all four of those domains that Jeff highlighted earlier, which is reading, writing, listening, and speaking. But it really aligns with how the language is actually used in the classroom. Hence the MTSS guide that came out this past year, showing how to scaffold up for students and build some supports.
Great. So Mr. Sanderson, you raised my second point, so I'm glad you went there. I am really cued into us getting exceptionally valuable data that is reliable in MCAP for our multilingual learners. This, as in my view, has been one of the weaknesses of our MCAP program, is our ability to accommodate students related to their language needs on the MCAP assessment. I know we've made some moves on Spanish-speaking multilingual learners in terms of having an accommodation for them. But if happy to hear you comment on that now, or we can follow up what future plans might look like as it relates to translation services available in a multitude of languages that our students bring to the table, so that they can demonstrate proficiency or demonstrate what they know, whether it's proficient or not. On that, I got to tell you, one of the things I'm thinking about as well is, and then I'll move from my question to, which is my comment, turning into a comment. I am thinking a lot right now about how our assessment suites can evolve with evolving technology, with AI in particular, and more sophisticated language models coming out of AI that might allow us to have embedded translation as opposed to whole new assessments or cumbersome, costly accommodations or translated versions of tests, so that we can provide much broader access for students. So let me stop there. Mr. Sanders, if you have any responses, or welcome those, or we can follow up.
Yep. So we can do combination for sure. I agree. We did recognize, and that's part of the RFP process that Dr. Wright had us undertake, is recognizing limitations in our current assessment suite. For starters, as we reintroduce the kindergarten readiness assessment this past school year, we specifically ensured that it was designed and developed in English and in Spanish, which was an improvement from our legacy instrument that students previously had taken. With respect to MCAP and what the future state mandated assessments will be in Maryland, part of that request for proposal was ensuring that all tests across all content areas and all grade levels were universally designed, that they were the same type of test. And so you'll hear a lot more in the coming weeks and months about multi-stage adaptive testing, which we believe is the most accurate, accurate diagnostic for, and it presents the greatest precision on student skills and where they are. And so we're excited about that. There will be enhancements, both that or the assessment itself. When we did call for English language and Spanish language being the two largest languages spoken in Maryland. I hear you on the other languages. We recognize some of the challenges as it relates to fiscal ability to be able to have the design. There's also challenges as it relates to standardization of instruments when you have a small pool of students to be able to give field test items to and so forth. But we will have, to your earlier point, enhanced functionality, technology and enhanced items, as well as tools that are available for students on the new assessments. And then we'll certainly, I think we're going to have to provide ongoing discussion to state board members and to you, Dr. Michael, on some of the other additional enhancements that we need to make with the state assessments going forward.
Thank you.
Incredible. Ms. Chang. You're on mute. Okay, I think she might have frozen. Okay, we'll come back to Ms. Chang when she's, I think. Oh, there you are.
Is it okay now? Can you
We
hear
can hear
me?
you. Yeah. Your video is lagging a little
Yeah.
bit, but we got you.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, let me turn off. I think, yeah, the Verizon thing kind of impacted in many ways. Okay, there we go. Yeah, so since we stay on, I'd like to dig a little bit into this slide. So please clarify if I interpret very differently. What I can level 1 through 5 and 6 in this WIDA assessment. And then we look at the WIDA assessment that student meets level 1, which those bucket of students kind of take the 61.7% meets the MCAT level 1, but while there are 38% of students meets level 2. But when we look at jump one level ahead, when we look at level 3, yeah, that's good that we have more students only meets at the level 2 at 69.7%, while we have only very margin level 3 of MCAT at the 5.3. Am I interpreting correctly?
Yes, ma'am. That's exactly right.
Okay. So what are the gap between the two tests? Because 5, 6, we still have a chunk of students, 40.9% of students say WIDA say, oh, they are meeting 5, 6 level, yet they are actually meeting MCAT level 2. And level 3 of MCAT percentage is improving, which is very good and exciting. And even we have a little tiny bit of 2.2% of level 4 for MCAT students. Is there any because certain reason, maybe the assessment tool, maybe some underlining things that they are enjoying? It is okay if we need more to kind of dissect those data and look a little bit deeper. I can accept that.
Yeah, Ms. Chang, you broke up just a little bit towards the end of the question, but I think we had the gist. Possibly, Mr. Sanderson, do you feel like you have any clarifying questions?
No, I think that particularly like with the level 5, level 6 WIDA scoring that you used as an example, I think, and I would just highlight again that those students that have achieved that score are actually achieving a higher proficiency rate than what we're seeing statewide in general. I mean that, so I do think that's encouraging and part of the picture that we're looking at, that these students are. I think what's encouraging is once they achieve the English proficiency, they're experiencing success on state assessments.
Definitely, yeah. But we want to bring up the level 1, level 2 MCAT population and push them to more at least green, if not yellow. Okay, thank you very much. And my second question is that it was mentioned in one of the slide 12 that the students at the lower grade kind of pick up more of the pace to both, I would guess, the WIDA. Am I correct? Because it really doesn't say it is MCAT or WIDA.
I think I got all the question. So this slide, what it represents is the by grade band, so elementary, middle, and high school, annually, what percent of those students are making annual progress towards English proficiency as measured by the WIDA access test. And so we are seeing.
Okay, so it's WIDA. Okay, thank you. And I heard that there were some more integrations, interventions got administered to the elementary school students. Yeah, that's probably why their score is kind of, our percentage is up trending, where the middle and the high schoolers, they're trending going down. So my question is, are there any more integration programs or something that can help our upper grade students?
I think I caught some of that one, so I can grab this one. I think what we're trying to do is, that's why our growth moving forward is really focusing on that deeper alignment between English language development and secondary literacy, content area instruction, and MTSS, because our goal overall is to ensure that language support's embedded across their day. It's not limited to that single course or period where they're taking in an English language development class. So we're trying to shift that narrative.
I see. Okay, thank you very much for the answer. And my last question, I promise, that by looking at the number of the students, multilingual students are growing, one of the slide, I think number 13. Yes. So with that big chunk of population growing, can we kind of, do we know where are those students in which grade band, like in elementary, middle, or high schooler?
You know, that's an
Because
excellent
the question is kind of, yeah, the question I have here to clarify is actually tied to, you know, different band of schools, the different grade performance, some trend and some are downtrend, and there could be, there are a lot of new multilingual learner students register or enrollment increase in high school versus elementary school. So they could kind of attribute to the outcome a little bit.
Yeah, I appreciate you
So
elevating
if
that.
we can kind of differentiate those, that would be great. Thank you.
That is great. Thank you, Ms. Chang, for all the questions and the push here on some of the data. Are there other questions from board members before I ask just a few quick hits? Okay. Just can I get one clarifying question? Why does the WIDA alt access have a different score to cut, like a cut score? Is it a different scale? If
It
it's
is.
not, okay, great. That's all I needed to know is it's a different scale. Thank you. And then a few things that I want to sort of note here overall, and then they can come and follow up so we don't need to discuss here. If I'm reading correctly, the last two slides, if we just jump to those real quick, to Ms. Chang's point, and I think some of the points that Dr. Michael were making, this is important to pay attention to because if we look at this relatively, the way that I'm scoring it, if we look at the reclassified population, the students who scored a 3 or a 4, i.e. proficiency on MCAP, it's approximately 63% of the students who have reached reclassified status. That compares to put this in perspective, 11.1% of the MLs in the state. To me, that feels like there's some interventions here that are really important to pay attention to, and to try to lift up across the board. 63% is a large proportion of students that are hitting proficiency. I know now it means we need to find ways to make this timeline towards reclassification happen more efficiently. I'm wondering, and this is not a question you all need to answer here just for time's sake. I'm wondering if we know that there are any interventions or teacher training support or teacher support that we can provide to potentially even all educators that should be shared across the board here for our educators that could improve English language proficiency for all students, not in just particular MLs. Or if we're just paying attention to that. Like, I think it's worth taking a look at, which is why I think this is an important thing to take a look at. The same thing is happening in math. It's 25.5% versus 7.2. And while it might not be as big of a change, it's still pretty large difference when you compare it to students who have made it through this process. So, all right, I'll hold some of my other questions. I don't think that they're relevant or necessary right now. Any other thoughts before we move on? Dr. Michael.
I don't think we can leave this conversation about WIDA scores and without just stating the obvious that if we can't figure out how to make schools safe for many of our immigrant students, we can expect achievement to go down.
Yeah.
And this is, a topic that is constantly evolving. We're getting a lot of feedback on this. And I just want to state, like, school access attendance are prerequisites for student achievement and learning. And I just want to make sure we bring that into this conversation.
Important point. And thank you for lifting that up. Team, thank you for bringing this to us. And I, like Dr. Michael and other board members, are eager to continue to see this each year. Thank you for bringing this forward to us. Let's move on. Moving right along, we're going to now get a preview of MSDE's Career Connected Learning Guidance and Career Pathways Framework. We're going to hear from Mr. Richard Kincaid, MSDE's Assistant State Superintendent for the Division of College and Career Pathways, and Tracy Kittle, the Director of Apprenticeships and Industry Recognized Credentials. Team, send it over to you.
Thank you very much. Good to see everyone today. Chair Greer, members of the board. Want to run through our career-connected learning system that we are beginning to socialize across the state. Want to just mention when the board adopted CTE standards last fall, and then is moving forward with adopting a number of additional frameworks and standards for things like, and policy for things like mathematics. We're wanting to center all of that work into a seamless and frictionless system for students once they get into high school. And one important thing to acknowledge before we dive deeper into this is these conversations began when we began evaluating the journey that a student would take through the guidance system. So understanding how to navigate high school and whatever they choose to do after high school and how we guide them into those different opportunities. We recognize you can't guide a student into a system if a cohesive system doesn't exist, which is why we wanted to begin exploring career-connected learning and find all of the different ways of integration so that the way that we describe high school and opportunity for kids is clean. It's with one voice across all of our content areas, including a number of our state partners. And that's what this is. So my trusty partner in crime, Tracy Kittle, is going to join me on the presentation. As you know, all of this work is grounded in our strategic plan and goals. Today, we'll be focusing specifically on Pillar 3. And within Pillar 3, the specific areas of ensuring that we increase the percentage of students who meet the CCR standard by graduation, increasing the percentage of students who enter into and complete post-CCR pathways, which include post-secondary credit, APIB, career-connected learning experiences like an apprenticeship or an internship, and then earning an industry-recognized credential. And then, of course, increasing the percentage of that gold standard of students moving into a registered apprenticeship program. So today's presentation is going to be fast and furious. Tracy and I both have our timers going so that we honor your time. But this is generally what we'll run through so that you have hopefully a more comprehensive view of what the career-connected learning system is, the student impact, and then all of the partners that are along with us on this incredible journey. So I'll turn it over to Tracy.
Thank you, Richard. And it's so good to be back to start or finish a conversation that we started back in November. That last November State Board meeting, I believe many of those on this call may remember that our team was sharing outcomes about a $12.2 million Maryland Works investment. And at the conclusion of that presentation, we were able to highlight some key lessons that were learned. And many of those key lessons are highlighted here on this slide. And what they do is they directly inform a new way forward for Maryland's career-connected learning system that is going to build on the strengths of what already exists and then intentionally reconfigures the structural barriers that have historically limited access for students. So if we are making promises to young people and families that we will ensure that all students are prepared for success in college, career, and life, then we need to be mindful about the solutions that are going to remediate some of those barriers to participation. That's going to include students participating regardless of transportation access, regardless of the number of intervention blocks on a student's schedule that may be required, regardless of a student's language or learning needs, or the regional differences in employer availability or access to paid positions. And so to take on this very complex but necessary work, MSDE has been aligning across divisions and across agencies. And we're really excited to share that alignment with you today and to illustrate further what that progress has looked like. On the next slide, just wanted to offer a very brief preview of what's ahead. So this is just highlighting some really early outcomes related to industry recognized credential attainment and apprenticeship participation, as well as CTE enrollment. The ultimate goal here is that we are providing trend data showing that there is encouraging growth. We do have a strong baseline. We are ensuring that the responsibility for developing young people extends beyond just a CTE classroom, and that there are early indicators that we're moving in the right direction. Next slide, please. So when we speak about Maryland's career-connected learning system, it's really important to note that we are not referring to a single program or initiative or course sequence or new pathway. We are talking about, as Richard had mentioned, the overall coordinated strategy across the entire agency and the entire state that connects education to workforce needs by intentionally braiding together the existing efforts, many of which the board is actually very familiar with, so that we can operate as one coherent system rather than separate disconnected initiatives. And this started in 2023 with the publishing of our college and career readiness guidelines. Those outlined how we build CCR readiness and identity development across every content area, every grade band, every special population. This also includes a new coherent system that we've been speaking about in CTE called the Core Flex model, which we'll preview shortly, which optimizes how students in any academic pathway, whether it's physical education, animation and design, world languages, or carpentry, how they can see themselves all earning industry recognized credentials, participating in approved apprenticeships, internships, school-based enterprises, or other industry-aligned capstone projects. And so with that, the CCL system, as Richard noted, is also intentionally including components of, for example, our new math policy, right? We work closely with Dr. Brightful and her team to learn and support one another, not just in the alignment of content and standards, but also being really thoughtful about the coordination of sunrising and sunsetting course sequences in mathematics and CTE to ensure that the transition period for LEAs feels really digestible and it's rooted in change management theory, right? It's one thing to give LEAs a pretty policy guide, and it's another to make sure that we are helping them metabolize the transformation. So we've been working across divisions to do that. And that list goes on from our digital learning team to our advanced academics team. A lot of folks here are already familiar with the work being done with the CTE committee and the Department of Labor, and we even have the interest of the governor's office at this time as well. So the next slide is going to chat through what you all must be asking yourself right now, which is why is everyone so excited about this? What you see here are the 4 components of Maryland's career-connected learning system. So they are grounded in a shared understanding that our role as a state agency is to create the permission and the flexibility and the system conditions that allow for local innovation to thrive. So that's going to include scheduling flexibility. For example, ensuring that any student can participate in career-connected learning experiences, not just those enrolled in specific CTE programs. It means creating the enabling conditions for students to be both and. For a student in comprehensive arts who can also complete an industry-recognized credential or apprenticeship. A student in an AP pathway who also earns a computer science credential. So this is how the system is really going to be able to move into a flexible student-centered design framework. It's going to sustain rigor, it's going to expand opportunity, and again, it allows every division at MSDE, from physical education to special education to communications to multilingual learning, to really lean into their role in preparing young people for the passions that they might not have had a clear road for in the past. I do want to shout out Teresa. I think she might have hopped off. But to even tie to the earlier conversation, she has given us a sample of at every single WIDA stage, all 5, what and how a student could participate in a career-connected learning experience. And so we're very tightly aligned around sort of the shared voice, the common language, the guidance, the implementation plans, really making sure that we are complementing rather than overwhelming or duplicating things for LEAs. So for example, our 6-year plan guidance that is coming out shortly includes a triage to IEP plans. It includes a triage to accelerated math plans. So you can see this shift from sort of compliance to coherence as we're starting to strengthen our collective impact around Blueprint's vision. The next slide here, I want to move through really quickly because I actually think it's probably more important and useful for your time to show you rather than tell you how the career connected learning system centers students and elevates student voice. And so we're going to go through some examples here that illustrate how students are and can be the drivers of their pathways, and how an equitable system that is supported through thoughtful career advising creates those conditions for all to truly mean all. So on the next slide, what does this system transformation actually look like in practice? And we want, the board to leave today with tangibles, not just ideas. And so to optimize the promise of Pillar 3, we are truly required to reimagine school schedules and course sequences so that they're flexible enough for transient students, for migrant students, for students who are served on the alternative framework, for students whose interests naturally evolve as any adolescence does as they gain exposure to new industries and new possibilities. It has, again, we have to create the infrastructure for the dexterity for students to be both and. And so this is an introduction to the CTE Core Flex model. It allows both school systems and for students to choose their own adventure. So for example, if we place this in the context of CTE in an auto program, for example, a school district in Montgomery County, specifically Damascus High School, does an excellent job in their auto program. They might look at their data and say, moving forward, our data tells us that we should continue to offer auto 1, 2, 3, and 4. Perfect. That's a great option for them. We also have Prince George's Community College that has an excellent ASE certification that they offer at the local college. They might say, we are going to double up on auto 1 and 2, and then we're going to triage 3 and 4 to the community college where students can also earn an industry credential. Frederick County has actually expanded, Dynamic Auto has expanded their number of shops from 1 to 7 because of the youth apprenticeship program. Frederick County might be able to look at their model and say, we're going to offer course 1 and 2 at the local school center, the new CTE center they have, and we're going to flex with apprenticeship in order to increase our capacity for CTE enrollment attainment of IRCs and apprenticeships. And so we also know, though, that this allows students to think about how they want to choose their adventure, how they can be both dual enrollment and CTE. And we know that this framework is applicable for other pathways as well, who might want to optimize CCL experiences. So you might have a student in the arts who wants to take stage production for courses 1 and 2. And then instead of taking the third course, they take an internship where work plan determines by the industry partner the skills and the knowledge that the student needs to know and be able to do to then earn that IRC. In fact, on the MSDE website, the public can find that our arts team has pulled a list of 24 currently approved industry credentials that connect with their new pathways. Our physical education team has put forth 3 different IRCs this cycle. Our world language team is thinking through different translation IRCs for an industry we know that has high demand. So you can start to see through the Core Flex model the way that we can be multidisciplinary, we can be both and, it can be for CTE or non-CTE students. It's especially helpful for students who are transient, who leave Garrett County and don't come to the Eastern Shore with a CTE program that previously existed and then their course sequence gets interrupted. It's helpful for those migrant students and helpful for students who change their mind. It's helpful for students who might want to start in horticulture and end in diesel mechanics because they want to work on a farm all, right? It allows student that flexibility that we're really excited about that doesn't exist in the current system. On the next slide, we wanted to chat through how we're supporting schools with this significant transformation. We have current guidance as well as a support guide with student personifications currently going through our accessibility process to be released on January 20th to districts. We are hoping that is going to really launch us into a year-long series of convenings in order to start to launch the work locally. Those FAQs and student personifications have been shared with many, many content areas, and they've been able to look at, Teresa's been able to look at students, our special education team has looked at their students, our comprehensive arts team, our advanced academics, and said, how can all of our students participate in a career-connected learning experience? So we're excited to bring that to the local level and go on tour with it. We are also fundamentally believing that people are the greatest investment you can ever make. And so we are investing heavily in some on-the-ground work. There is a significant statewide convening on January 30th happening at the Maritime Center, where we're going to bring together key decision makers at each district in order to introduce them to this system. After that convening, we are also going to be going into 6 different pilots to start to beta test what this looks like, both in programmatic, but also in data infrastructure. We'll be also working in specialized breakout groups. For example, we're meeting with all the special education directors tomorrow to talk about 6-year plans in the CCL system. And we'll be working through those groups as well in the spring. And then over the summer, we're going to be thinking through our data infrastructure to align with other implementation goals for 27, 28. And then we're also working very closely with the governor's office on supplying a rubric for the way that he could potentially designate a special distinction for schools that are showing promise in the health of building a sustainable CCL system for the state. And so there are many layers and checks and balances from practice to implementation. And we've been doing this with all of our state partners, as you can see listed here. So for example, with the AIB, they have been closely connected to our 6-year planning guidance in order to complement and work in coherence. So for example, if the AIB is going to be measuring our schools on whether or not a student has had or taken an aspirational inventory, we will then be complementing our data infrastructure to identify what that aspirational inventory might have said so that we can prepare 2 years in advance for what kinds of opportunities our students might need or what kind of industry credentials we might see coming down the board. And so again, making sure we're not inundating our schools with duplicating data, but we're working with our partners to ensure that it's streamlined and strategic. I already went through a lot of this, so Richard, you can skip through some of the folks from the instructional programs team. I hope I gave a number of examples there. I do want to focus on the support with our transitions team in particular, because I think it's so rich. We have been working very, very closely with MSDE's transitions team, as well as the State Agency Transition Collaborative on a subcommittee to strengthen the awareness, tools, and resources of the CCL system for students with disabilities. Currently, we have a team from DDA, MDOD, the Maryland Coalition for Inclusion Education, DOORS, the Parents Place of Maryland, and then representatives from Calvert County Schools and some other LEAs on designing resources to be able to amplify the CCL system for special education students. So they're researching what school-based transition programs between 14 and 21 currently operate within each LEA. That's going to include eligibility, referral points, capacity, employers who are actively partners in transition services, what role they play, whether they're a site host, their paid placement, their mentorship, they're offering jobs. We're coming up with a repository of resources for access and support. So what transportation options are available for students with IEPs or on the alternative framework? What assistive technology, job coaching, and accommodation supports are usually provided to those students? And so we are really working closely as the CCL is serving as like a needle in a needle threading role to make sure that we are all speaking that one voice. To finish up here, we're of course working with advanced academics to ensure that students can be, again, both enrolled in AP and still have rich career-connected learning experiences. We are also, of course, very proud of Maryland's teacher apprenticeship pipeline and the recent news around that apprenticeship that has launched. So we are collaborating very closely with Kelly Meadows and her team. On the next slide, I think we are also, of course, we cannot do this work without our school counselors who are just integral to ensuring that they're understanding the master scheduling that goes into this, that 6-year planning, and that COMAR element is sequenced well with career counselors. And so we've been working with their directors in a variety of capacities throughout the year to ensure that they are socialized as well. And then, of course, we're pressure checking with those pilot sites that we had talked through. I wish Dr. Bell was here because Talbot County is going to be one of our first stops, but we're really excited for that. And then the last slide here just gives you a preview of what that implementation time looks like. We have the big launch convening in January. We have the pilots in the spring. We have the data infrastructure in the summer. And then in October, we're really excited because we're going to bring it all together in a huge statewide conversation where we're going to be able to broaden the number of people who can come. And that will actually also include the influencers within each school district. So if people can bring school staff who do this work as well. So we have a plan that we're really excited about, and it's being really well received. And I'm happy to kind of pause there, open it up for questions, or leave it for Richard to add any other points.
Yes, I told you when you all adopted standards for CTE that I was going to give my team the night off. Clearly, I did not do that. So really proud of this work. January 30th is a big event. I know some folks on the call are going to be there. We're not considering that the finish line. It is literally the starting line of all of this work as it rolls out. And truly, I can't give Tracy and her team enough kudos on the level of collaborative work and the hard work of understanding all of the systems that exist, not only within MSDE, but within our LEAs as well, to be able to tie all of this together. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Great. Thank you so much for the spirited update on the career connected learning pathways. So board members, any questions that surfaced while we were going through this? Ms. Medina.
Hi, team. I'm back. And I apologize. Hopefully you can hear me. I am on soccer mom duty driving to practice.
We can hear you.
So,
we can hear you just fine.
great. Thank you very much for the presentation. And I really appreciate highlighting the collaboration for the school counselors. And I wanted to really highlight and I guess ask not even just specifically for the two of you, but for Dr. Wright and the rest of the team, to just make sure that that voice in particular is really highlighted, because I know when the standards and blueprint and all that stuff kind of came out, and the first thing that jumped out was, well, now we'll have college and career coaches, and we're like, no, but school counselors do that already, right? And so when it comes to things like scheduling and all this amazing work that you're talking about, we've been doing that, but like in silos. And so I just want to make sure that my people are not getting pushed out of these conversations, because they are an essential part of the great work that you guys are trying to do. And sometimes it's just not feeling as essential for our high school counselors to really have not only their say kind of in how things are going, but that the implementation, that their voice is heard on how this stuff is rolling out. Because from a high level perspective, we have these conversations, but our parents are running to the school counselor, and then the school counselor was not a part of the conversation. You know what I mean? So again, just it sounds like you guys are already heading there, but I just wanted to really kind of drive that home, because this really is a major lane of our school counselors who are doing incredible things across the state. Thank you so much.
No, and I'm really glad that you elevated that. And so beginning at that starting line at the end of the month, 5 key positions have been invited to that from every LEA across the state, including the chief academic officer, school counseling supervisor, career coaching supervisor, CT director, and a member of the workforce board. And one of the reasons for that is silos exist everywhere, right? And oftentimes when we have conversations with various LEAs, the comment is, does my CAO know this is a priority? Does my school counselor know what their role is? Have we had good conversations about how the career coach fits in? It looks differently all over the state. And from the get-go, we want to level set that this is a Maryland system. It's Maryland students, and we all work together towards the same goal. And part of that, and what you'll see over the course of the next year, one of my favorite terms is swim lanes, right? Like people understanding what piece of the pie is theirs. And when collaboration and having other supports, like within your campus or at the state level, or even in other LEAs that are tackling similar conversations, having those communities of practice is the only way to move this work forward. So, yes to everything that you said, elevating not only the voice of the people who are doing this work, but also keeping front and center to make sure to elevate that agency and voice of students who are ultimately impacted one way or the other, depending on how the adult relationships are functioning within the system. So all of those pieces fit together. Thank you for that.
Great question, or great point, comment, and well put. Other board members, questions? Mr. Barnes.
A quick comment about the share.
Go ahead, Ms. Chang. I think you were trying to jump in. It's hard to hear you, though.
Okay, sorry about that. Good comment about that inviting doors and also focus on special ed students into the picture. Thank you very much for the effort.
Yes,
really great. Mr. Barnes.
Oh, most definitely. I had nothing substantive to say, but just thank you. I love the student decision making, empowering students to make those decisions. And I just want to lightly, very lightly call everyone out. Everyone should be jumping out of their seats right now because of what you just heard. That is transformative for students. Just to be able to, no matter what you're studying in general education, I want to go and explore this certification or that certification. I just hear it so often, and just high school being that place where you can explore. So I just thank you so very much. And thank you, Mr. Kincaid. I'm just always impressed by the work that you do and the work that your team does. So I hope everyone is as excited as I am.
Man, my team has the best hype, man. Thank you, Mr. Barnes.
Incredible. Incredible hype, man. One high level question, slide 10. I don't, that's the slide that sort of shows, and if you can bring it back up, that's helpful. That just shows the pathway through, like, there it is. Thank you. So, the different courses, the flex courses, love this structure, the flexibility of it, and everything. Just a clarifying question, is CCR readiness a gate to this?
It's a wonderful question. So the way that CCR is currently structured, there are a number of ways to access that. Entry-level courses like Course 1 and Course 2 can still be offered, like
Okay.
pre-CCR, right? It's when you get into the Flex Course 1 and 2 that it potentially becomes a gateway, the way that Blueprint is currently written, right?
Yeah. That's what I was assuming. I just wanted to make sure that's clear for the audience, for the team here as well. Just to know that CCR becomes that threshold from course 2 to the flex. That will be a thing for us to pay attention to. Other than that, I'm eager to see or eager to help if there's any help needed to spread this this news and system across through parents, just so they understand what the changes are that are coming as well. If that's already been happening, that's wonderful. If you need some traction, here to support. Just let me know. Anyone else before we move on? Wonderful. That takes us to our last agenda item for today. It's going to be an overview and an update on the LEA's minimum school funding progress. Ms. Donna Gunning, MSDE's CFO, and Mr. Krishna Talor, MSDE's COO, are going to present this item. You all still with us?
Yes.
Yep.
Donna, whenever you're ready.
Okay.
This is Donna show, and I'm going to hand it to her. Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Let's make sure I'm going. Okay, here we go. Gotta find the right window. Okay. I'm not sure what you all can see. Can you see this?
We
Yes.
can.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so we are going to talk this afternoon about an update on minimum school funding. Part of the blueprint requires MSDE to, in conjunction with AIB, to develop a system that enables LEAs to report the data necessary to evaluate whether or not they're meeting minimum school funding. This system is what we call the Power School system. We have presented to that system to you all previously. I'm sorry, this is our strategic plan. This is goal 5. Okay. Okay. So the system has been up and running. LEAs have reported the first full fiscal year, which is fiscal 25 data. They are for 26, they're reporting monthly. The report that we are going to review today is the report that's due annually in January to AIB that is intended to give AIB the data they need in order to evaluate progress of LEAs meeting minimum school funding. So just to recap, minimum school funding requirements, there's 10 separate programs that are involved in this. All but one requires 75% of the per pupil amount be allocated and spent at the school level based on the enrollment for that program at that school. The concentration of poverty per pupil program requires 100% of those funds to be allocated and spent at the school level. The State Board and AIB, as you all know, created a joint policy back in 2024 surrounding minimum school funding that in essence, that policy says that using 2025 data as the base year, in 2026, LEAs must reduce by half the number of schools that the number of students who attend a school that does not meet minimum school funding. So over the course, what are you going to do? Snap. All right. I want to do one other thing real quick. So one of the things that AIB has been doing is progress monitoring conferences. I'm sure you guys are well aware of these. As a part of those conferences, they did a deep dive into the data, both the 25 data and 26 data through October of 25, in order to evaluate the baseline from 25 and develop the 26 target. So in order to figure out how you're going to reduce by half, they had to do the baseline analysis for 25. So they have completed that. They've had these conferences with the LEAs, and the data that we are presenting today to you is simply that same 2026 data, but through November. Because we're required to report this data in January. The most recently closed fiscal month for us would be November, which would give us time to prepare the data and submit the report to AIB. Okay, so we're going to talk now a little bit about what we did to do a little bit of analysis with this data. AIB has the responsibility for analysis, evaluating. We're just giving you all a heads up of what we found. So the statute and the requirement for minimum school funding is spent at the school level. Currently, if we're looking at data through November, we're roughly a third of the way through the school year if school systems began spending regularly in July. Many don't begin spending really regularly until September. So it's not really 30% of the year. So we looked at the expenditure data, and the majority of school systems are spending what we would expect them to spend. So at that point, that's pretty much all we have from expenditure standpoint, because we don't really have any other means of and analyzing the data that they provide us. So we said, let's look at the budget data and look at whether or not, based on the budget, right? That's your plan. Based on that budget, where are the LEAs and the schools in meeting minimum school funding by program? So remember, 24 LEAs, 1,400 schools across 10 programs. It's a lot of data. So we categorized the data into meet or not meet, right? You're either 75% or you're not. Then we took the not met and we looked at it a little bit further because there were a number of schools that were at like 98%, 96%. And it seemed to my team a little, you know, if it's black and white, on, off, I get it. But for this analysis, we categorized anybody with 95% or higher as meeting. So we looked at those that were not met, which means you were either 0 to 95%, right? We looked at 0 to 50%, you're not met. Between 50 and 75%, we said you were in progress. I'm sorry, 95%. We said you were in progress. And then we further delineated that a little bit, as you can see at the bottom of the slide, to further identify where really we are and what the progress is toward meeting this based on budget data. So we separated the in progress out a little bit more by good, better, best. Good, budget is 50 to 60% of the requirement. Better, budget is 60 to 75%. Best is budget is greater than 75%, but less than 95, because remember, we made 95 equal meets. Anybody have any questions on that so far? Great. Okay. Okay. So of the 10 programs, this gives you a little bit of high level data on the analysis, right? So of the 10 programs, all 24 meet the requirement for special education. I'm not fairly certain that's not surprising to anybody. Of the remaining 9 programs, 17 met it for several programs, and then additionally 20 LEAs met it for concentration of poverty. 5 LEAs have less than 50% of the required funding budgeted in Comp Ed, and 3 have less than 50% of the required funding budgeted for multilingual learners. Sidebar note, this has been a huge lift for these LEAs. They went from being used to reporting at a statutory required category level at the LEA at the system level to now they had to report at those same categories, but now these 10 additional blueprint programs at the school level based on the enrollment at that school. This has been a massive lift. They have, in my opinion, done an amazing job getting to where they are right now. Are we where the blueprint wants them to be? Nope. But there is massive progress going on, and that's kind of what we want to talk about today. So at this point, I'm not sure. Yeah, okay, so we're going to go into the data. So this is the number of schools by program that have met or not met. So remember, met is greater than 95%, not met is less than 95%. And so you can look at the data and see multilingual learners is a problem. We kind of expected that. There's other issues with multilingual learner students and the mobility of those students, as well as the sparsity in certain LEAs. They have very limited number of students. And so getting the resources those kids need budgeted and spent at a particular school level, it can be challenging. Okay, so this is where we are for met, not met. And then we're going to look here at all those that were not met, but in progress. This is where they are in our good, better, best by program. Where there's a blank, that means no schools hit that mark. Okay. All right, so next step, lessons learned. What are we doing? Okay, so I talked about the AIB progress monitoring conferences. The other thing that AIB did was they had contracts with strategic partners that worked very closely with LEAs on a number of things. Majority of them worked on resource allocation methodologies to help them get closer to meeting this target. Okay, we talked about the joint board. So what's next? Power School, the system is up and running. We had one LEA that was still struggling, and we resolved that yesterday. So all 24 are up and running. We continue to support them in this requirement. It is important to note there have been a really large number of turnover at the CFO level in LEAs, and also a fair amount of leadership level turnover, which does impact all of this work. I talked about the magnitude of change. And okay, what do we do next? So we have looked at some common denominator comments that came from the progress monitoring conference. We've looked at this data, and we are going to present this a little bit to some other advocacy groups. And at the end of that, the plan is to offer LEAs a technical assistance session with me and my team to help where we can. Like, we may not be experts in allocating resources, for certain subsets of this work, but we can certainly help at least guide them, and we can hopefully at the end of this, the plan would be to get whatever their best practices are to, and then connect them with other LEAs that might be struggling in an area. So that's our next steps. And that is the last of this presentation. Questions?
Wonderful. Okay, board. Any questions? Okay. Seeing none, I just do have one high level question. Again, I don't think that you can answer this directly here, but I was having a little bit of trouble understanding from this data. I appreciate all the data. I appreciate this presentation. This is very helpful. It's also great to see that Power School is up and running now, and we've gotten through all the kinks. Thank you for working on that, all those of you who have. The question really revolves around, do we have a sense right now, or are we able to articulate the number of schools that would trigger the policy, the joint policy at this point?
So all of them would, right?
It's all of them. Okay, so all the ones that are out of compliance.
Right. 25 is the baseline. In 26, they have to reduce by half the number of kids as of 25 that attended a school that didn't meet minimum school funding. Okay. And then meet it 100% in 27. So that was part of the work that AIB did, was identifying the targets for the LEAs of the schools. Because remember, if you're a school and you have the population that warrants all of these programs, you have to meet all of them in order to meet minimum school funding.
Okay. That is very helpful, and thank you for contextualizing that so we know what work is ahead. Double checking. Any other final questions from board members on the call? All right. Thank you both, Mr. Tallor and Ms. Gunning, for joining us and presenting this information. Now we are going to adjourn to executive session to discuss MSDE's FY27 budget proposal. And I'm going to read the formal closing. Before adjourning, I want to thank the public for your attention and partnership. And we hope to see you at our full board meeting on January 27th at 9 a.m. and our next Strategy and Operations Committee meeting on February 11th at 4 p.m. Pursuant to Section 3-305B of the General Provisions Article of the Annotated Code of Maryland, the State Board Strategy and Operations Committee will adjourn to executive session to discuss the following: administrative functions. Is there a motion to adjourn to executive committee?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Michael. Is there a second? Can't be you, Dr. Lewis. Sorry.
I second.
Thank you, Ms. Medina. Appreciate it. I know that you're driving. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Great. Thank you, Mr. Klash. Thank you all, and we will see you at the next session.